Hi everyone, Gabe here. So I thought I would take a time to make a video of things that every trans or gender non-conforming person should know, whether you're just starting out in your journey or you need a little guidance in wherever you are in your journey or in your transition. And you might as well call this wisdoms, you might say, or rather things I wish I knew in the beginning when I first started out. So basically this is things that I want everyone to take away from this video or should know or keep in mind when they transition. So sit back, hang tight, pop open a cold one because I'm about to be real with you all. My first piece of wisdom is hope for the best but prepare for the worst. I know this sounds like a very general statement, but hear me out. This is a very important thing that everybody should keep in mind because there's going to be times where you think something's gonna go your way, but it ends up never being the case and it ends up totally the opposite of how you think a situation's gonna go. Like for example, let's say you're coming out to your family or like a parent or something and you think they're gonna be very supportive of you only to find out that it was definitely not the case after you come out to them and they're basically giving you nothing else but grief and unsupportive remarks and basically saying really nasty things to you or basically invalidating you as a person because they either think trans people are a phase or they think this is something that's not real. See, society is still not very well equipped to handle trans or gender non-conforming people in general, so this is something that people still need to understand when approaching situations where they have to come out to somebody or have to out themselves in certain situations because it can end up in putting you in danger or in a very insecure position like getting thrown out of the house. Which brings me to my next point. How people react is not your fault. Now what I mean by this is that you can be meticulously planning how to come out to somebody, you could come out to them in the right way, have your little letter prepared and right in front of you as you read it out to your parents so you don't lose track of what you're trying to say or what you're trying to get your point across. But ultimately how they react to the news is still out of your control and how they react is not a reflection on you. See, this is very important for trans youth or anyone who's still financially dependent on their caregivers or legal guardian, what have you, because they're gonna feel like it's their fault or something's wrong with them with the way their parents reacted, and that's not true. It's very important that you understand that you're a person who deserves all the love and support in the world, and some people are just not ready to handle you being trans, or they don't understand or can't wrap their heads around someone being identifying differently from the way they were assigned at birth. This is not to say that people can't come around given time and a little patience. That has happened, and there are stories of people who in the media of trans people or in memoirs or like videos of like stories where their parents were unsupportive in the beginning but they eventually came around, or they had parents that were supportive or on board with them and were going along in their journey every step of the way and were supportive from the beginning, which is nice to hear about and it gives people hope. But ultimately you have to remember that they may never all come around. There may be a point where you have to like shut the door on them or leave it open for them to come around, because you could lead a horse to water but you can't make them drink, can you? My third piece of advice is standing up for yourself. Now there are instances where this would be a clear exception of where you don't stand up for yourself. Like let's say your life may be in danger and it could result in death, or your livelihood, like let's say your ways of financial means is threatened. So there are times where you kind of have to let it slide for the sake of your living situation or for the sake of your safety, that you have to kind of let it go and remove yourself from that situation. But there are times where you're gonna have to stand out for yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. You don't have to sit there while a friend who's supposedly been told of like your new name and pronouns beforehand is deliberately trying to misgender you and use your name and basically making it a point to come out to everybody for you when you're very uncomfortable with that and you gave them no permission to do so. You don't have to stand for that. You can have the right to tell somebody, listen, this is not right. I didn't ask for you to be my advocate or tell everybody that I'm trans, because not everybody needs to know that. If they need to know that, you're gonna tell them. And if from that experience they still keep doing it, well, I guess being trans really filters out the garbage in your life, doesn't it? Which brings me to my next point, don't settle for less. Don't settle for people who only support you conditionally. Now I know we as transgender people tend to latch on to people who support us, even though because the amount of people who support us are still few and far in between in our lives. And so we tend to latch on to anything we can get. But don't go for half-ass friendships that only support you conditionally, and then when you get into an argument with somebody, they start hitting you below the belt and not calling you that you're not a real woman or real man or real anything. You can disagree with somebody, you can refute their points, but there's no excuse to be misgendering somebody or dead naming somebody just because of something they did or something they don't like, because everybody deserves some semblance of basic respect. A few examples of people that you wouldn't misgender even if you don't agree with them are Donald Trump and Caitlyn Jenner. Sure, we don't agree with their viewpoints, but we're not going to go around misgendering them and calling them other names that they don't identify with, would we? No, and anyone who does is ridiculous and stupid for doing so. And last and certainly not least, my final piece of wisdom is learning to leave things behind. If you're ready in your transition, you have the financial means to do so, whether it's having gender-affirming surgery or starting hormones or simply getting your name legally changed, just go ahead and do it. Don't pause your life for anyone. And what I mean by this is whether you have a partner or significant other who says they're not going to love you anymore if you transition, or they don't think they're going to like what they see, or they're basically parading you around as something you're not. Like, let's say they say you're X to everybody and that they identify as something that is an identity you don't identify with, or with an orientation that definitely doesn't align with your identity, then I think it's time to really start rethinking the relationship and open line communications with the other person. And if all communication fails, well, I think it's time to leave them behind and surround yourself with people who support you, and eventually you'll find somebody who loves you for the way you are and the way you present yourself to the world. Now, I know it's really hard to understand that, and you're probably going to think to yourself, oh, well, I think that nobody else is going to love me, so I don't think I deserve anything better. And I totally get that line of thinking, because I used to be there myself. But trust me, there's 7 billion people in this world, and there's a lot of those people who want to support you and love you for the way you are and not want to parade you around as something that you aren't. Now, I know there's also people out there who have and completely regret stopping their transition for the sake of the relationship, and basically they think it's going to be that easy to just not transition, basically just choose not to. But let me tell you something, if it was as simple as just choosing not to transition, I promise you a lot of people would have taken that route, because that definitely would have been the path to least resistance, because being trans is not easy. It's definitely not easy. It's definitely harder in other countries than here, so I'm very lucky to be in the United States, but in other countries, being trans is like a death sentence. Nobody will want to choose to be this. The community itself would not be as big as it is, and you probably wouldn't be seeing videos like this, because if it was as easy as choosing not to be trans, then a lot of us would choose not to. But unfortunately, for many of us, myself included, being trans and transitioning was basically the last resort. It was not one of the options, it was the only option after all other options have been exhausted, because trust me, by the time we get to transitioning, anything you've probably thought of, we've probably tried once or maybe twice. Choosing not to transition, in my personal opinion, and a lot of people can fight me on this, is pretty much you're wasting years of your life for some other person, and eventually you're going to end up resenting your partner and regretting all that time you've wasted. So why not spend that time being free and loving yourself and being as authentic as you can be, rather than at the end of your life you're regretting everything and you're put in despair and thinking of all the things of what could have been. And that, my friends, are the 5 wisdoms that I impart on every one of you. I hope you found this video helpful. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. What are you waiting for? And if you haven't subscribed, click that subscribe button. What are you waiting for? Like damn. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you real soon.